Now, interested parties and institutions, including survivors and affected families of human rights atrocities during the apartheid era, have until today to register to participate in the pre-consultation processes of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations into alleged efforts or attempts to stop the investigation or prosecution of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases. Now, the inquiry is led by retired Constitutional Court Justice Sisi Khampepe, and it was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa in May this year. To talk more about the inquiry into allegations around TRC cases, we're joined in studio by its spokesperson, Lionel Adendorf. Lionel, thank you for coming in and thanks for your time.
My greatest pleasure. Nice being here.
So, I mean, this is so important. The TRC, as we were speaking off air, 25 years ago, and here we sit with less than 10% of those cases, perhaps even looked into or completed. You'll give me the correct numbers. But I think what's important is to ask this question. What is the difference between the TR cases inquiry to the TRC commission that was chaired later by the Archbishop himself?
Thank you so much, Leanne. That's a very, very important question and also gives us a chance to explain that difference. One, the TRC cases inquiry is not a redo of the TRC case, of the TRC commission. So we must understand that we focus particularly on volume 6 of the TRC's final report. And that volume 6 deals with amnesties, those who applied for amnesty and got it, those who applied for amnesty and didn't get it, those who were mentioned for not even approaching or applying for amnesty. We're dealing only with those. So it relates to people who obviously have done something wrong and they want to come and do, and they made full disclosure, or and then obviously they got their amnesty, and those who were then where the commission found that they did not make full disclosures or were not honest enough, they obviously then did not get amnesty. But in those cases, the last category, the TRC obviously recommended that certain cases need to be investigated and others should then be prosecuted. And here we are. We hear numbers of around 300 recommendations for investigation and prosecution, of which the total is around, as you said, 10% that have been prosecuted or less than it. We obviously do not want to speculate on the numbers, but we want to see what we get. We obviously know the report well. Justice Sisi Khampepe, who is our commission chairperson, she was part of the Amnesty Committee of the TRC, and so she knows the issues well, and so we want to see what we get from that process.
So have you got an idea of which period the commission will cover?
The commission will, the TRC cases inquiry will cover all the cases that were at the TRC and that dealt with amnesty.
Okay, so it's all of them. I mean, the Foundation for Human Rights have raised their concerns. I'm sure you've heard it in terms of reference of the TRC cases inquiry. It says, to quote them, the commission's mandate should be limited to examining the mechanics of political interference, how it occurred, and who was implicated. What's your response to that?
Look, that's an important part of what we need to do. But there are also other people who, where they suggest that there was no political interference. And we need to establish both. There are cases, obviously, where some people say that there were political interferences from certain politicians or political parties. Then there are others who say that my case was simply dragged because the police were not competent enough. Others, interested parties, were saying that the NPA was not geared up or well prepared for all of this. But we would want to, that is why the commission has been established, to investigate these, to look into the validity of these claims, to look at the accuracy of some of them. And that is what we are doing, and we want to engage with all those interested parties, whether it is families and their representatives, whether it is whistleblowers who know something on why a particular matter or matters were never investigated or prosecuted. We want to meet with all of them. And that, as you said, the closing date for registrations is today at 4 o'clock, and so that we can then start preparing for the hearings, because this pre-hearing engagement with stakeholders and with important individuals and families or their representatives would give us an idea of how do we then move forward.
What authority does the commission have? Because I think a lot of people will ask that, you know, what authority do you have to adjudicate rights violations and, of course, perhaps award remedies?
Any commission of inquiry in South Africa only has the power to make recommendations.
And that's the problem.
And we hope then that the president would would take that serious.
Yeah.
But we have also had incidences, and I saw statistics the other day that around 80%, more than 80% of the recommendations of all the commissions of inquiry over the last 10 years were usually implemented, and we hope that that would be the case this time around as well. We also want to assure the public that strengthening our work, we do have, for instance, the power to subpoena people in aiding our work. We also have search and seizure power to to issue those warrants to search certain places or to seize certain documents. So those are important powers to also then come to the right and the best conclusion at the end of the day.
I imagine it's going to be quite difficult, because what we do know and the facts that stand is that there's currently 25 families that are actually sitting pending appearances in the High Court that have alleging political interference in all of this. So how does that work? I mean, how do you, I suppose, try and get that information without interfering with those proceedings?
That's an interesting question, but we do obviously not want to stop or impede on any external processes that have an influence and might impact our work, but our work continue. So that is why we want to start doing what we should be doing, so that we can get justice for all those families much, much quicker, so that we can come to conclusions and make recommendations and hope that the president will then see to that. Another important issue that we also need to remember is, yes, it's 25 families, but there are, as I said, these more than 300 cases that were referred to. So the 25 cases is like 10% of the total number, and that is why it's important that we need to give justice to everyone who is yearning for it or has been longing for it over the last 25 years.
So one of the organizations, and that's the Khulumani support group Skalela campaign, I mean, they've been camping for years at the Constitutional Court, or campaigning for years. They're trying to seek justice for apartheid-era crimes. Have you reached out to them? Are they going to be a part of this at all?
Look, there's one, we got strict instructions from Justice Khampepe and her other commissioners, Advocate Andrea Gabriel and former Judge President of the Northern Cape, Justice Homo, to make sure that our process has three distinct features. One, it must be sympathetic. Two, it must be empowering. And three, it must be engaging. And so, but also in doing so, we do not want to preempt, and we also do not want to nudge. We want people to come forward with these issues, people to almost a natural process where we want people to feel empowered enough to come and register to attend the pre-hearing engagements. We do not want to specify and say, you are important, or this is one should be considered while that one should not be considered. We want the communities and the public and these families to claim the process, and that is why we want it to be as empowering as it can be.
So it ends today at 4 o'clock, as you said, for those that are interested. Any extensions, if you haven't applied and I suppose past the date you decide, this is actually something I want to be involved in, will there be an open opportunity, or is that it?
Look, we obviously want to get down to the work. We obviously want to call for submissions, for testimonies, for evidence and all of that. And that is why we have very, very tight deadlines. Remember, the Commission should only do its work within 6 months, and we've already had 2 months in which very little has been done. So now we are saying that our deadlines are tight, but if there are exceptional cases, we will obviously consider it.
Remind us of when it starts.
The closing date for the registration is this afternoon at 4 o'clock. And everyone can obviously, who has an interest, can send an email to pre-hearing@trc-inquiry.org.za.
And the pre-hearing starts when?
We hope to have the pre-hearing within the next 2 weeks.
Okay. I want to ask you the format of all of this, because we all remember, the world in fact remembers, because they've used this as an example of TRC hearings and how things worked. I mean, we heard over 21,000 victims who sat down and shared their experiences in public sessions, incredibly emotional to watch and to do, one can only imagine, and how heartbreaking to see that 25, 30 years later, still very little has been done. Will this inquiry or commission follow the same route?
It will, but you must also understand that the difference this time is that we will not go into your matter and your experiences. This time we talk about your experiences on how the delays impacted on your case. That's the one. Two, we want to hear from you what you know. Have you spoken to a certain sergeant or investigating officer? Has anyone in the NPA made promises, or have you had any engagements with them to then help us establish what the reasons were for these delays, and was there any political pressure, etc. So we're now dealing with that issue on what you know about the delays. So yes, as much as we anticipate that it would be emotional, because it is obviously very traumatic experience for people to have now, 25 years later, not seen justice, we will provide them with psychosocial support that is guaranteed. We will not assume that there will not be any emotion or trauma, and those whistleblowers that are within or were within any of these organizations with information that can help us, we will obviously consider witness protection if we must, or some assistance to help them move forward.
One of the sad things, and we've been seeing this with different cases that have come before courts, and the attempts being made to delay investigations and prosecute these TR cases, due to lapsed time, it's almost impossible to prosecute the perpetrators, and the reason being they're too old or they have passed. And this is a major problem. So that's where people are sitting and saying, this...
What's the use?
What's the use?
Yeah.
What is the use?
Look, that is a very important consideration for us, obviously. And as Justice Khampepe always reminds us, is that the TRC, if a 40-year-old widow came to deliver evidence at the TRC 30 years ago, today she is around 70, and so she almost feels like this country has let her down, the judicial system has let her down, our prosecuting authorities have let her down, and we now need to give her that hope. We need to renew it, and we obviously understand that some of the children in one case, where the one who drove the case for the family has passed on as well, so now they need to get new representation. People have almost forgotten about these cases or given up, thinking nothing would happen. And now there is a chance that a police officer who was in his 40s in 1980s when he committed these atrocities are now 80 years old, as you've explained. So what kind of justice would there be? But our job is to make sure that those families get the justice that they have been yearning for the last 25 years.
Another important aspect, obviously when you'll use the TRC final report as a reference to look at some of the amnesties that were given to the apartheid-era perpetrators. Will that be looked into as well?
We're only looking at the cases that were handed over in the Amnesty report, and to see why it is that a particular case or a certain set of cases have not been investigated when that was the recommendation, why it is that cases were never prosecuted if that was the recommendation, and if the illustration that you've used fits into any of those categories, obviously we will consider that.
Yeah. So recently, former President Thabo Mbeki and former Minister of Justice Bridget Mabandla, they failed in their court bid to intervene as respondents in the constitutional damages. I mean, we all know about this, that case of the constitutional damage by families of victims of apartheid-era atrocities. Will they perhaps also be called to testify? Look,
as I said in my introduction, we do not want to speculate and we do not know who would come. But if you hear these names, the Commission would obviously consider our approach. As I have indicated, we do have the power to subpoena people, but I want to also make it very, very clear that the commissioners have made it clear to us that subpoena is a last resort. That's the one. We want people to voluntarily come and provide us with evidence and with testimonies. So we would not want to use that power. And secondly, we do not want to speculate on what we might get. We have not even had a single hearing yet. We have not even put pen to paper yet. But we hope that the South African population would accept the inquiry, come and assist us in our work, and make sure that we get justice for those people. But on who we will get, we can't say at this moment.
Yeah, that's still a work in progress. And I mean, one would hope that there is going to be some solution in this one. 158 cases out of more than 300 cases that were referred to the TRC, that referred by the TRC to the MPA for prosecution, remain under investigation, and only one case, one single case, has had a successful investigation. The power to prosecute doesn't lie with you, obviously. This, again, is recommendations. It's up to the president. So I'm not even going to ask you anything about that, but I think it's important to reference the fact that this starts under that email address, because you said it so fast. We want it slowly so that people can either write it down and our team can perhaps write it and put it up on the screen as well. Is there a telephone number? And what about people in rural areas if they want to get involved in this as well?
Thanks for asking that, because what we have seen, and I'm monitoring the emails coming in, and what we have seen is that many of these people would approach the police station and ask the police sometimes to send the email, and we've received 2 of those. So it is pre-hearing at trc-inquiry.org.za. Pre-hearing at trc-inquiry.org.za. And we only have the email address so that it is better to monitor it. And as I've said, some families have gone to the police station, the magistrate's court, and asked them to register their interest. And we appreciate the support that we are getting from those law enforcement agencies.
How many registered have you got so far? How many people have registered?
We were quite excited about the number, and it is more than 100, I can guarantee you that. We're currently, because it's closing today, we are currently looking at what we already have. We're checking that, say for instance, if a law firm says, this is my family, we need to make sure that that family has been mentioned, and we're busy sifting it to make sure that we get the right number.
All right, good luck. Thank you
so
Lionel,
much.
Thanks for coming in to talk to us and give us more details about this. Lionel Adendorf, of course, is the spokesperson of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Cases Inquiry, talking about the work that's being done. There's that email address, pre-hearing at trc-inquiry.org.za. We got that right, Lionel? Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Write it down. And if you would like to contact them, remember the deadline is 4 o'clock this afternoon. So that's an important email address for you to mail if you'd like to share your perspectives and join the inquiry.